We are in another impromptu session for Facebook Live. Glad to be with you. Today we're going to attempt to answer some questions live. We had some technology issues last time that made it a little difficult, but today we're going to attempt to do that. So by all means, type in your questions, hopefully as we see them. If you see some helpers flying around us in the background, don't worry. Anyway, my name is Gary Bates. I'm the author of Alien Intrusion, UFOs and the Evolution Connection, and we're here on this Facebook site to talk about the movie that's based upon the book. Of course, the movie, being more recent, has lots of updated information and lots more first-hand testimonies and interviews with people who have seen strange things in the sky and also claim extraterrestrial encounters. So with me today, I'm pleased to have Dr. Robert Carter. Dr. Carter is a biologist, and he specializes in the study, in fact, of human genetics. And he was one of the experts we interviewed in the movie regarding the evolution of life on other planets around the world. You're seeing the questions come in there, Rob, already. So I'm wondering how I'm going to be able to see them here. But have you got any questions come in there?
No, just good comments so far.
Very good. Rob, one of the things I found is that everyone has an opinion about this. When you look at comments on Facebook, I've done probably, I don't know, I've lost count, 20-something media interviews just in the last 2 weeks, and talking with radio hosts, etc., and people who phone in. We've been researching this phenomena now, what I'd call the modern UFO phenomenon, since we first heard the term flying saucers back in 1947. We've got about 80 years worth of data. The US government has investigated them under 3 separate projects in the 50s and 60s. There was the Condon report. The Roswell incident has been investigated 3 times by the government, and then the General Accounting Office did an independent audit. A couple of weeks ago, the government released that the Pentagon had been spending $22 million a year researching UFOs. We saw that footage of the F-18 Navy pilot chasing one, and he couldn't catch it, and then it just disappeared. So everyone has an opinion, because the reality is everyone's struggling to say, what is it? People don't seem to have a definitive answer. So in your area of expertise, I wanted to ask you a couple of questions, because some of the opinions go like this. As human beings, we are arrogant to presume we are the only ones in the universe. Now, I can understand that, because the universe is a massive place.
Yes. So
if somebody out there even believes in God as the creator, or they believe in Big Bang evolution, most people would say, why would God create a universe so big just for us? We can answer that another time. But the concept of evolution on other worlds that permeates our sci-fi, looking at all those weird and wonderful creatures, the idea there is that evolution took a different turn. But for evolution is a game of chance, isn't it? So in the past, billions of years ago, there was a big bang. Life happened to evolve on the Earth by chance, random processes. And I'm being long-winded, but I want to set this up for you. In human DNA, we have 3 billion letters of complex coded information. And when we talk about information, we're not just talking a randomness of letters. All those letters have got to be in the right order and the sequence to tell the cells to build a human being. So no one reading my book, 420 pages, I would think that came about by an explosion in a printing factory. All the letters happen to come about in the right order. So people would say, given enough time and chance, though, life could have happened here. So let's say, okay, let's credit and say, okay, that's possibly correct. That possibly happened on the Earth.
All right.
So in a 14 billion year old universe, what are the chances of it happening multiple times over? Because we have about 150 UFO sightings every day.
Yeah, it's true. Actually, it's kind of funny, because people, once they conclude that evolution is possible and evolution happened, which I don't believe, but once they conclude that, they run straight into, therefore it should have occurred many, many times over the course of the universe's history. But who says? If it's a chance thing, if the conditions have to be just right, if you're depending upon this incredibly remote probability that the chemicals happen to come in just the right way at just the right time in order for that spark of life to happen. Why would you expect that to happen more than once, if ever? So yeah, there's a probability problem we're having here.
So what we're saying is, and let's say possibly did happen millions of times over. In the movie, we discussed something called the Fermi Paradox. This
Yeah.
is a well-known scientific problem, even if life multiplied millions of times over. In a 14 billion year old universe, I think it goes something like this. For example, let's say human beings, Homo sapiens, us here on the Earth, we first took those upright steps and became fully human about 200,000 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, they say something like that. Okay.
200,000 years ago. But let's say there were planets out there where life evolved hundreds of millions of years before us. And after 1 million years of civilized advances, they send out a colonizing expedition to another planet. And then after another million years on that new planet, they send out another expedition. And then the original one sends out an expedition. Now, this has been mathematically calculated, and it's called the Fermi Paradox. What's the issue going on here? What's the problem?
Well, you have an exponential progression there. If you start with 1, then you have 2, then you have 4, then you have 8, and then 16. Even if it's only once every million years you have a doubling, it doesn't take many doublings before the entire galaxy is elbow to elbow in alien technology and alien civilizations.
But even take it further, because we're talking about vast amounts of time in a 14 billion year old universe. It's not just the galaxy.
It's
the universe
the whole thing,
would
yes.
literally be teeming with life.
Teeming.
We'd be tripping over each other,
we'd be
wouldn't we?
overflowing with it.
So there's an issue there. So what we're talking about is what it's not. Now this brings up...
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the problem with that? With the Fermi Paradox? Why is it a paradox?
Because if evolution is true,
Yeah.
it should be teeming with life. Is that it?
Yeah. It's not teeming with life. That's the point. Where are they? Where's all the alien life? It's not like our little, alien brothers are flying across the universe to hide here secretly and observe us. They should be filling the skies. They should be completely saturated. The whole space should be full of different alien cultures.
Mm-hmm.
And we have no evidence for it.
All right. So I want to make a point here. We're not just trying to be debunkers.
Oh, no.
Because lots of people, as I said, have an opinion. If evolution's true, therefore it must be. Well, even if evolution is true, we're not seeing the evidence of all that life there. So we're trying to apply some scientific rigor. The reason I say we're not debunkers is because I don't want people to misunderstand and think, well, we're not saying it's all bogus or it's a hoax or there's nothing happening, because I've personally met, and I don't certainly mean this in any conceited way, hundreds of people over the years now who've seen things, and also hundreds of people who've claimed to have strange encounters in their bedroom. They've been driving the car at night. Even on our Facebook page here, there have been comments by people who said, it happened to me. I was age 4. People have these alien abduction encounters. It typically happens in childhood, etc. So in terms of dealing with what it can't be, that is, you've got to exclude other things. It's a bit like the Spock off Star Trek. He said, you've got to discount what is not possible, and you're only left with what is possible.
Yeah.
So there's been a few comments on Facebook because of people's preconceptions, right? Everyone's, as I said, already made their mind up about it. They come in and say, oh, is this some religious take? Or religion and the study of UFOs have nothing to do with each other. I'm going to make a strong statement here. When I hear that from somebody, that tells me they've actually never researched it, first off, because even the serious researchers who are secular, atheistic even, will tell you that these entities, whoever they are, come and are actually very interested in religion because they're trying to solve questions, or they're trying to give us answers about where we come from, what is our meaning and purpose of life, what happens to us when we die. We're all going to be taken away to some utopian planet in a distant section of the galaxy, etc. What's your take on that? Because I know you kind of came into this area a little bit later than someone but myself, so you've come at it from a more fresh approach. So I'll just let viewers have your take on that.
Oh boy, that from that one question we can spider out in all sorts of different directions. I mean, how long do you want me to talk on which particular subject? We can talk about the philosophy. We can talk about the religion. We can talk just strict science. As a scientist, I actually come up about this with a scientific approach, and that is list all your data, make a hypothesis, take your hypothesis, apply it to the data, see if it fits. If it doesn't, revise your hypothesis, winnow out the good ideas from the bad ideas. And when you do that, you're left with something that's not quite what you might have thought when you first started. And that's what the big alien researchers have concluded. I mean, a lot of the people in the culture actually have fallen behind the times because they don't realize the wind that this giant wind of change has happened to this whole field. And now we've got, the big movers and shakers are saying, no, these aren't physical beings. That these aren't, these are interdimensional entities. And, well, boy, that sounds philosophical and religious right there. I mean,
So, for example, Pedro here writes, so it's a religious things and angels and demons. And respectfully, that's kind of a throwaway comment. It's a bit of a straw man because the cultural view, for example, of what people think of angels and demons are, ethereal beings with spirit wings. Even the Bible never records them like that.
no.
They are here physically.
Yes,
They
they
eat. They
eat.
kill people. They affect our environment. Everything we see in the UFO phenomenon. And again, when I was making a strong statement before that when I hear that comment, it tells me that somebody's never seriously researched it. Because in the movie, we interview Nick Redfern,
Yeah.
a guy a secular interviewer who works and is pretty much the History Channel's go-to guy on all things alien. He's written over 40 books on it. He wrote a book where he talked about the government's involvement, the US government involvement in researching what he called, not us, the demonic.
Mm-hmm.
And they went to a MUFON, Mutual UFO Network researcher by the name of Ray Boucher. And the government approached him because they thought he might be able to add some perspective. He was a UFO researcher, but he was also a Catholic priest.
Very interesting
And
combination.
he said, and he actually got to interview some of the guys from the government, and they said that in some areas, with some of the experiences people were having, they viewed it as literally demonic. So just hold on when you throw a line or a blanket that says, oh, it's angels and demons. You might have a pop culture view of angels and demons.
Yeah.
But John Keel, who's one of the most well-respected ufologists in the world, he wrote the book The Mothman Prophecies, which was made into a movie with Richard Gere. I'm sorry. He said demonology is not just another crackpotology. He said it is the ancient and studious study, if you like, sorry about the verbal typo, of these entities that have been with us and have been recorded since basically time began. That's a kind of a paraphrase of what John Keel said. So when people think about extraterrestrials flying here from distant planets, you said we don't see them. We know that the laws of physics would have to be violated for that to happen. And when the government and the serious researchers say we are dealing with something that is interdimensional, we're actually on the same track. We're heading down the same path, aren't we?
When I say we don't see them, I was up in Minot, North Dakota. There's a big Air Force base up there, and they do a lot of satellite tracking. And so I asked one of the guys who does satellite tracking, I said, can you tell me the size of an object you could detect in space? And he says, no, that's classified. I said, okay. Could you detect a tennis ball halfway between here and the moon? He goes, yeah. So we have the scanning technology to look out and see anything, something as small as a tennis ball made of metal out in space. So now we have to invoke cloaking technology to hide the alien spaceships, and we have to do the anti-gravity drive, and we have to do this and that, when that's not science.
Yeah, so what we're doing is resorting to unknowns to explain unknowns, which is not the scientific approach.
No.
Talking about having incredible ability to see things out there, what's the asteroid they've just recently, we just saw a picture of it floating around the internet last week. Umamama, is it called?
Something, I can't pronounce it, yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing, cool,
So we're even seeing a picture
fascinating.
of this rocky asteroid.
Was that an official picture, or was it an artist rendition?
An artist rendition, but based on size and
yeah, and
shape.
it was kind of
that they
elongated
fixed.
and flat. That was
It's out there in the dark, so it's pretty hard to illuminate it. So here we are. We're getting lots of comments about whether this is being a religious thing.
I see one of my high school friends there. Dude, thanks.
So I think it's fair to say what we're trying to do is, bring a a different approach, because the Hollywood pop culture approach says, you know, it's aliens flying here and they're faster than light spaceships. But I want to repeat this. Anybody who seriously researches this, Christian or otherwise, these are the people that have worked in this field for years, will all agree that it's not what we might describe physical entities visiting us from a distant star or galaxy.
And the reason they reached that conclusion was because they studied it. They analyzed it. They looked at it. They looked at the information. They lined it all up. They connected the dots. And the conclusion pretty much all of them have come to is different than what most people today think the conclusion is.
So it's evidence-based.
It's evidence-based.
Now, you've seen the movie, and obviously you're in it, but you're going to be biased. But, I mean, I know you also wouldn't lie. I believe the movie is evidence-based.
I do too.
So we try to explore the science of the physics of traveling in space. We talk about the biology. We talk about the sightings that people have. I think one of the most exciting ones was to get a man, an elderly gentleman by the name of Joe Jordan, who worked at a radar installation in 1952 when these objects buzzed the Capitol dome of the White House. It resulted in the largest gathering of the press since World War II. And we even have a clip of an Air Force officer giving an explanation or a non-explanation of what they are. But Mr. Jordan's testimony of seeing these objects appear over 2 separate weekends, flying at speeds that we don't even have the capability of doing today, let alone back in 1952. The Air Force was dispatched, chased them, and they just vanished into thin air. The Air Force landed, and out came the lights again. And then they burst into little groups, and then they came back into one big group. What does that?
We're not talking about something in the physical realm here. I mean, even if you want to, say, oh, they went and then jumped into hyperspace, or they turn on their cloaking things. We're still talking about changes in size and physical objects merging into one physical space. That's not what happens in the real world. Therefore, these things aren't the same thing that people are thinking.
So the government and traditionally people have been looking in the wrong place. And one of the problems, and why we've made this movie, as I said, is that when you talk to the movers and shakers, they know what it can't be, but most people have not been told what it can't be. So that leaves us with whatever is possible. So again, we're talking something interdimensional, supernatural. John Mack, a Harvard researcher, called it spiritual. Some people might call it demonic. And again, be careful of implying or arching your cultural view of what that is, because the serious researchers understand that whatever you want to call it, whatever tag you want to put on it, it's been with us since we've had recorded writings. So as someone who's been involved in this now, researching for this for over 20 years and working with others, I believe that for the first time we're having a candid look at what it is or what it can be. Leaving aside or working through what it isn't, what is it likely to be. And you and I can't lasso a UFO. We can't go and get the tractor beam and bring it in and do empirical scientific tests. So how do you unpick it? I think we unpick it by looking at the testimonies.
But can't testimonies be corrupted? Can't they be lying?
Sure.
One thing in your book that surprised me most when I read, before I even met you, that all these people have similar stories, but the people have never talked to each other. So we have independent witnesses that corroborate each other. That's not something that happens when people lie.
Well, in the movie, we and I mentioned this last time, Dr. John Mack.
Okay.
He's not a Christian like me. He was the professor of psychiatry from Harvard University. Had a great reputation as an author already. He'd won a Pulitzer Prize for a historical book he wrote on the Civil War. That was an interest of his. But being a clinical psychiatrist, he said, I'm going to study all of these people who claim that they've been abducted by aliens. And he thought there was some psychosis going on. Obviously not really happening. He's a scientist. He knows they couldn't get here. And I think we got this wonderful interview when he's on Oprah. And Oprah's saying, Dr. Mack, what is it? And he talks as a medical professional that childhood fantasy doesn't present the symptoms, make-believe.
Yeah.
People telling lies do not present in the same way. That as a doctor, as a clinical psychiatrist, he said the only thing that presents itself the same way was real experience. So he talked about all these people having experiences. Here we go, we'll get that going again.
Right.
Having experiences that they didn't know each other, the things were reported in the press, and he said it could be up to millions of people across just the United States alone. So this is no small thing. And like you said, how do we know that testimonies can't be corrupted? Well, what would be the chances of all of these people independently all recounting similar experiences, the same morphology of the experience happening to them? I think it's very, very remote.
Eyewitness testimony is notoriously difficult to apply in like a legal setting, because people could be mistaken, they could be lying, but it's when you get multiple people saying the similar story, that's when the weight of argument it becomes overwhelming, and that's what happens in this alien sort of thing.
So someone's asking us about Planet X. And,
oh yeah, it's a couple of them.
Yeah, no disrespect, that kind of pops up every few years. In fact, I wrote about Planet X back in 2005, and it was postulated even by NASA at the time to account for a gravitational wobble in our own sun. In other words, there could be a hidden planet that's causing a gravitational effect on our sun.
Now, is this the planet that's supposedly on the other side of the sun from us? Or is this one far out in the outer reaches of the solar system?
That's right.
Which one?
It apparently enters our solar system every few thousand years, and when the aliens get close enough, they can jump over, visit the Earth, and come back. So every few thousand years, it's quite interesting they'd be so prescient to have been able to do that. But there is no Planet X that NASA calculated, because they, in their calculations, they realised it was could be accounted for by Jupiter, causing the slight wobble in our sun. But in recent times it's become popular. There was a author by the name of Zecharia Sitchin who actually first postulated this idea of Planet X, or Nibiru as it's called, and it's recently found favour again in terms of NASA's planet hunting. So although they're planet hunting, it's not necessarily Planet X that they're talking about. They're finding extrasolar planets all the time, but it doesn't mean it's Planet X.
And just this morning, I was reading on the discovery of Uranus.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Herschel. He had looking with his telescope, and he found what he thought was a comet. Within a couple of years, they said, no, this is actually a true planet. They finally named it Uranus. I think 60 years later, before Uranus had even made a complete orbit, they had worked out its orbit. I mean, actually, they worked out its orbit within just a couple of years. And after a while, they said, wait a minute, it's not where it's supposed to be. Something's disturbing its orbit. And that's after accounting for the gravitational effect of Jupiter and Saturn. There's something else. And so some scientists looked at it and they said, okay, X, Y, and Z, there should be another planet right here. And so a man wrote a letter to the German observatory and said, there's a planet right there. They discovered it that night. Neptune.
Yeah. And that is because the clockwork precision that our planets run with in our solar system, we can make these types of predictions.
Yeah. So this is where the Planet X idea comes from. There's a little bit of uncertainty in there, but now we've discovered Ceres. We've discovered Pluto. It's the gravitational argument. We keep on refining and refining and refining our model because we say, oh, there's a little error there. What's causing the error? And they go and find that thing, and boom! And so we're putting so many pieces of the puzzle together. There's very little left as far as our uncertainty of the planetary orbits.
So once again, don't resort to unknowns. Never seen a Planet X.
No.
Never seen a planet Nibiru.
No.
Never seen it enter our solar system.
No.
We don't have any historical writings of it entering our solar system. So again, that's a bit of an appeal to unknown. Yeah. And again, not being debunkers. This is my point about everybody's got all of this information that apparently is out there that the government's keeping secret and so on.
Oh yes, all the conspiracy theories.
You can kind of invoke anything that you like.
But it's even worse than that. Sorry, I'm trying to interrupt you. If they have the technology to jump from Nibiru to Earth, that means they have spaceships. Why can't they do it when Nibiru is far away? Why does it have to be close? I mean, there's there's nothing preventing them. If they've done this for thousands of years, their technology is super advanced compared to ours. Why can they only do it when they're close? That actually doesn't make any sense when you start thinking about it.
So, again, we're talking about what it's not, and that means, well, what is it? Well, guess what? We're not going to tell you here because we
That's
want you to
right.
go and see the movie, and we also want you to share that information. But I promise you, it will be a unique perspective. That's been the feedback. It's been sent out to hundreds of people so far who've looked at draft screeners. So far, the comments have been uniformly positive in terms of that it brings new or unique information. So I encourage people to share on the Facebook page, January the 11th. You can see, you got to go to alienintrusion.com or fathomevents.com. It's on 732 cinemas around the States. And you type in your zip code and you can find a cinema near you. You need to book tickets. Some cinemas hold 100, some hold 200 or 250, but you might be disappointed on the night. And look, at the end of the day, as I said, you might disagree with our perspective, but I think in terms of making an informed opinion, one should cover all angles and all perspectives. And I'm one that moves in the UFO community. Many friends there. They have a different take on it to myself. We are certainly not hostile to each other. That's one of the things that I find is interesting in the UFO community, because we're all trying to solve the puzzle. We're trying to look for answers in terms of what it is. And an open and honest approach I found in the UFO community is to consider all angles, because we're possibly dealing with something that is not empirically testable, and that's the issue. That's why after 80 years, no one can say, I can tell you for sure what it is.
Plenty of ideas out there.
Yeah,
Man,
plenty
I'm
of
seeing
ideas.
ideas scroll past on the feed here. Man, there's some very interesting ideas. But so what? An idea is just an idea. I can have any idea that I want. When you actually apply what we know about the idea, a lot of the conspiracy things actually fall apart.
Yes, I think so.
Aliens hiding here secretly, et cetera, et cetera, et
And I
cetera.
think that a lot of that, if we're honest, and this is where people need to take a self-check, reflects our wish list, our desire. I remember as a young man, I was strongly influenced by the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Yeah, I
Steven
remember that.
Spielberg. I think this year is it the 50th anniversary? And in the days of drive-ins, so for you young ones watching, drive-ins used to be a place where you'd park a car and watch a big cinema.
Probably 40th.
40th?
I'm guessing 77?
No, it'll be the
78?
Yeah,
70, 80, 90,
It'll be the 50th.
2000.
50 years, yeah.
Oh, 'cause I'm going to be 50 this year.
But I remember
I can't do the math. Anyway.
remember driving home from the drive-ins down these lonely country roads, looking up in the sky and just wishing I was Richard Dreyfuss, who was taken into the spaceship.
Yeah.
So I'm fully aware that, one, it does have a religious impact, a religious a view, or there's one there to be discovered, but it can personally impact upon our desires. And a lot of UFO writers have said that study of UFOs, in fact, could be a reflection, psychological reflection of people's wishes and desires. I wish it was that simple, because then it would be easy to answer. But the reality is, as we said, we see things.
Somebody a while ago, earlier in our feed here, I probably can't find it just scanning. I think it was a woman's name. She said, I want to see an alien so bad.
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, I would have said that at one point in time too. Just my curiosity. I want to know. I want to go on a spaceship. I want to do with science. I want to go to Mars. I want to be an astronaut. I really, really, really wanted to. But man, when you actually hear what people are saying about their interactions with the aliens, I don't want to see one of those things.
No.
I don't want to interact with. I don't want to be abducted and tortured and etc.
And sexually abused. So we could go on about the details of that. And a man we interview in the movie by the name of Joseph Jordan, a MUFON researcher who we went to South Korea to interview him. He's now the national director for MUFON there. He's interviewed over 400 cases of people who claim abduction experience. And he said, regardless of what you believe it is, that these people need help because they are so traumatized by their experience. So that's why I kind of said that just be careful what you wish for there. So, Rob, I think it's time to go. So I would again encourage people to open their minds, literally, because people often will say that our view or my particular view, because I come from a Christian perspective, might be narrow. But as I said, I'm one of many out there looking for answers. And one of the good things, as I say, in the UFO community is we are very helpful to each other. Regardless of where we think they're coming from, we all recognize the nature of it. And that's what we want to bring out mainly in the movie, is talk about the exact nature of it. It's not the Hollywood depiction that we want it to be in popular sci-fi movies and even some of the more sinister movies.
The movie's Hollywood quality.
Yeah,
this is fantastic. We did it. I'm really impressed with how it came out. But it's not in that quality. It's not. We're not depicting the aliens in the way that Independence Day or Star Wars depicts them.
Yeah, there are problems with that idea. Okay, so thank you for your attendance. Great to get your comments. Lots of comments. You guys didn't actually ask a lot of questions, but stay tuned because we are going to have another Facebook Live and think about some of the questions that you might be able to ask during that time. Please, again, go to alienintrusion.com or fathomevents.com, type in the movie name, and then you type in your zip code, and it shows you a theatre near you. Share with your friends on Facebook, please. I believe, again, you will have not seen many depictions of this phenomenon in this particular fashion. So I encourage you to be there. And hey, after you've seen the movie, we look forward to your comments even then as well. So thanks very, very much, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Press and hold. And then swipe to the right.